Life with Dog is a 2018 film written and directed by Corbin Bernsen. It stars Bernsen as Joe, and we also have Marilu Henner as Alice. And at the very start of the film, we find out that Joe loses his wife in a bike accident, in a cycling accident. And basically the film is about him, understandably, going through grief, being very depressed about this. And the film made it seem like it was about a dog who came into his life and gave him a new sense of hope. And there's maybe a teeny tiny bit of that, but it's not the uplifting film it seemed to suggest it was going to be. This is based purely on the information that I had on Letterboxd and also IMDb. The dog is adorable. There is no question about that, but it's not a film about a dog. Not really. Unfortunately, Joe is not a very likable character, and that's not because he's not very happy or he's not bouncing around with joy. Understandably, I think he is displaying very real, believable emotions, but there's just something about his character that made me seem like that's what he was like before the accident as well. This is me maybe reading into things that aren't there, but that's kind of the impression that I got, that this wasn't exactly atypical of his character anyway, and he just wasn't the most likable. And unfortunately, that, for me at least, that never really changed. That's not to say he doesn't have any character development, but it definitely wasn't enough for me to end up liking the character. The narrative itself is very slow, not a lot happens, and honestly, it just doesn't have a lot to offer. I think they should have taken a completely different direction with it, and this is purely my opinion, but I think had it been more about a film of a man finding a new sense of hope with this random dog that appears, and there are certainly films out there like that, it would have been a much more moving experience. The narrative would have been full of hope and positive messages, and that would have been a really gorgeous and very, very emotional film. But because the narrative is very lacking, the protagonist is not exactly very likable, there's not really a lot going on there, and it's really hard to have an emotional response to this, because primarily I was just feeling irritated at how dull the narrative was and how unlikable the protagonist was. So that kind of took over any other emotions that I might have felt. So it's not a great film. I think they took the wrong direction with it. There are some positives. The performances are very good. The characters, I guess, are believable. I do believe Joe as a character. I think he's a very realistic individual, but that doesn't mean I enjoy following his story. The camera work's fine, lighting's fine, absolutely no issues with any of the technical aspects. It is simply the narratives, and also, as I said, Joe's just, for me, he never became likable. So it wasn't a particularly enjoyable experience because the narrative didn't have a lot going for it. I never emotionally connected with the character. Yes, the dog was adorable. So Life with Dog was not what it sounded like. That's not to say I couldn't have enjoyed it. Absolutely, there are times when I go into a film expecting one thing based on the way it's being marketed. I get something else, and it's still an enjoyable experience. Unfortunately, that's not the case here, and I think had the narrative been truer to what it seems like it's meant to be about, it would have been a better experience, a much more moving, emotional experience with a much stronger message. So, great performances, realistic but unlikable protagonist, adorable dog, but other than that, also I love Marilu Henner, so that was quite nice as well. But other than that, for me at least, Life with Dog just didn't have a lot to offer. It tried, but I don't think it succeeded with it. It's not a great film. It could have been a great film, but I think they took the wrong direction with this one.